me that one.
Oh, this is, maybe I didn't turn it on.
Yeah.
Test. Yeah, that does work.
All right.
Good morning. What time does this 9 o'clock session start? 9 o'clock. Good morning. I want to welcome you here. This is the Ace of Clubs Successful Square Dancing, a take on the social square dance aspect of it. My name is Buddy Weaver, and joining me on the stage is James Cha. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about James. James comes from the Chicago, Illinois area. He is one of the very early people who got working on a successful SSD program in his own area. And he'll probably tell you a little bit more about himself as he gets going on this. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am and was not an early advocate of SSD. In fact, I really didn't find any, when it was in its early stages, I didn't really think very much of it. But my eyes were opened, especially when I went to the Illinois State Square Dance Festival, and I called your convention up there, and they had an SSD dedicated hall. And I said, wow, there's a lot of young people. Wow, it's very enthusiastic. Then I met Janice, James' wife, Janice Cha, who's in the audience, and found out just how much of a spark plug these two people are and what they were able to build in a relatively short period of time. And it's sustainable. It wasn't a flash in the pan. It didn't flash hot and then go away instantly. It lasts. And then I would say, once my eyes were open to it, once we saw what was happening after this thing called the pandemic. Anybody here have heard of this thing, the pandemic that we had? No? So I knew that when the pandemic hit, and I forecast that we would lose approximately 50% of our dance population. I forecast that. The reality is we lost 60% of our dance population. And it didn't come all at once, it came incrementally. Because what we found is that about 50% of the people came back. And of those 50%, probably another 20% of them found out they couldn't dance successfully anymore. Or they weren't able to keep up, or for whatever reason, and they quit again. I'm going to share with you something that is a little bit perhaps off topic when it comes to talking about successful square dancing, social square dancing. And that is my philosophy on quitting. That if you quit once, it's the most difficult thing to do. But once you have quit something, quitting the second and third and fourth time comes very easy. Friends, 100% of our dance population quit in March of 2020. It wasn't by choice, but they quit. And so when they came back and they found that they were not able to keep up the way they kept up before they had to be locked out, or perhaps their mental faculties weren't as sharp as they were, it was very easy for some of them, in some cases, many of them, to quit a second time. And they may come back in the door, but guess what? It's going to be very easy for them to quit the third and fourth time. So in our market, which is the Southern California market, in particular, I'm in the San Diego, California market, SSD became something that not only was I suddenly familiar with over the period of working with you folks over in Illinois, but when we're in COVID lockdown, I said, you know what? I think we need to take a more serious look at SSD. Along with the serious look at SSD came, that's quite all right.
See ya.
I hate to interrupt you while you're in the middle of something.
Apologize.
Are you done? Along with taking a very serious look at the SSD program became the reality that it could be the thing that actually saves our square dance program. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our square dance program in the San Diego area. It has been in California 0 to plus for, Tim, what do you say, 3 decades? At least 30 years. Steve, would you agree? 30 years, 0 to plus. And the clubs have had the expectation that you're going to teach plus in 10 months. Friends, it doesn't work. It has never worked. It is not sustainable. The math doesn't work. Not turning out dancers that are able to keep up. But here's where the rub really comes in. We came out of this post-pandemic and we said we've lost 50 to 60% of our dance population. Now, Before the pandemic, some of these clubs only had 3 squares. If you take away 50%, what does that leave you? Square and a half, 6 couples. How long, if you are Dancing Plus as your entry level, how long can you sustain yourself with only 6 couples paying money at the door? If your Plus classes had been taking 10 months, are you suddenly able to crank them out in 10 weeks, 10 hours? No. The reality is it's still going to take you 10 months. And if it's going to take you 10 months, can you as a club continue to keep your doors open for 10 months, operating at 50% of the population you had before COVID hit? Now what if your population, what if your club only had 2 squares? Or barely had 6 couples before the pandemic hit? That was the death knell for these clubs. That was it. So we came in our market with SSD, and we said, listen, we teach this in 25 hours. And let me introduce you to the concept here, because many times we as callers talk weeks, 12 weeks, 14 weeks. I'd like you to change or shift the way you look at SSD to hours. 25 hours to teach. Now in our case, in our particular area, we are 90 minutes for the class. That's all I'm good for, is 90 minutes. Anybody who's ever been to one of my dances know that, you know, after the first 90 minutes, not very good. So 90 minutes is our class time. And that equates to 14 weeks for us. Now I'll get into a little bit more on the technical side of how we do this as we get into it. But leave it to say that we do this in about 14 weeks, and we push it a little bit longer to give people a little bit extra dance time, okay? Since we've come back post-COVID, we've been able to turn out 3 lessons, 3 graduating sets of classes. So our Friday night dance club celebrated their anniversary dance. 80 people showed up. 19 of them SSD dancers. That's pretty darn good, because for the groups that don't do SSD, at $10 a person coming in the door, that's $190 that that club will never touch. By their own choice. They chose not to touch it. Okay? So now that we're kind of setting the stage for what SSD does from a financial and from a just strictly numbers point of view, now we're going to kind of dig down into it. What exactly SSD? By show of hands, how many people here are familiar with what SSD is? Show of hands. Probably the majority, if not everybody here, is familiar with what SSD is. There are many people in our square dance world right now who don't understand SSD. And it's my belief that in the absence of understanding something, it becomes made up. We don't really know what it is. We don't like it. We don't like it because we don't do it. We don't like it because we don't understand it. And so therefore we're going to kind of come up with what we think it really is. Speculation, that's what my notes say, speculative. And that speculation leads to myths, what we really think is. So in our area, and I've heard some people say, well, SSD is dumbed down mainstream. It is not a dumbed down mainstream. And so to go to that topic of what it is, we actually have 2 panels set up today. And so each panel is focused on SSD. Each one addresses how to create a successful SSD program. One, organizational, and another, the technical aspect of it, the calling aspect of it. Friends, you are here this morning at this session for the technical, the calling aspect of it. Now the organizational aspect of it comes later on today. Janice, what time is our panel today?
2:30.
2:30. Janice, Cha, and I, along with Janine, will be on, Alexander will be on that panel on the organizational side of showing how to create successful SSD program. And I'm going to place a great emphasis on the word successful, because I believe firmly that there is a difference between theory and reality. And I could stand up here and give you the theory of a successful C3A program. It's all theory. Don't do it. Couldn't tell you how it really works. Friends, we're going to tell you how it really works in the real world, what we have done. So going back to the first myth about it being a dumbed down mainstream, it is not. In fact, too many of my very good calling friends have told me, I can call that. It's just fewer calls. And they don't prep. They don't prepare themselves. And they stumble and they stutter. And the smooth dance aspect of it goes away because they're not clear on what's really on the SSD program. Wait, can I call a do-si-do? Yeah, you can call a do-si-do. Can I call a virulep? Yeah, you can call a virulep. No prep. So James and I are going to talk a lot about that prep and how to make this something smooth, because what it really is and what it's intended for is smooth dancing. It's wind in your face dancing. How we accomplish that in the program by itself, if you consider there are approximately 50 to 58 calls in the SSD program. Friends, that means there are fewer calls for your dancers to master. And let's think about that word master. Because if they're doing mainstream, they're closer to 100. If they're doing plus as your entry level, it's 115 calls to master. And in the absence of a dancer who's very comfortable with the call, mastering the call, there's going to be stumbling. And when they're stumbling, what we inevitably do as callers is we should be watching the squares, right? And we say, spin the top. Oop, one person didn't move up. 4 people, half a square, boom, went down. So we're going to stop and try to help them. But what if we didn't have spin the top? What if then half the square didn't break down? What if the whole square kept moving? Now, it presents us with the new challenge of being able to call one call to the next. In the absence of calling one call to the next, and this has been something that's been coming over the last, I would say, 25 years, as we've added more calls to our list, whether it's mainstream or plus, there has been more of a hesitancy of the dancers to accomplish it. They're not mastering the calls. And so I'm going to come out and step. Is this cord long enough to step out here?
I think so.
Can I go right around you? Would that be all right?
That's fine.
Here's what we see. Caller is going to call a call. And let's say the call is going to be load the boat. And they finish and load the boat, and they're standing like this. And now the caller's waiting for the one square to get caught up. So here's what the dancers do. Join me for a second. Right, we finish load the boat, we're standing like this. What's the first thing the dancers do when they're waiting? Because if I greet James on the street and shake hands, how you doing, James? We don't stay in like this. We would feel very uncomfortable. We naturally would fall back. Well, friends, that's what your square dancers do. When their caller is saying load the boat or spin the top, and you spin the top and you're standing up like this, and you're holding his right hand like this, and the caller's waiting for somebody else, they fall back. Their body weight goes back over their heels. The heels hit the ground. They're in a relaxed position. The more the caller does that, the more the dancers think that's how you dance. A beginner dancer thinks that's how you do the call. In the same way that if you have that one person who, let's say the call is to do a square through, and that one person is kind of way out here. So what James is doing? He reaches out, he'll pull me into place. That one dancer who never learned how to do square through thinks, oh, that's the way you do it. I wander out here until somebody grabs me and pulls me into place. That's not learning. So let me rephrase it. It is learning. It's learning how to do it wrong. And the more they learn how to do it wrong, they get very good at doing it wrong. The more the dancers step to an ocean wave and wait for the caller and then step back, they learn that that's the way you dance. So then James comes in and calls. I come in and call. We say spin the top, or we say slide through and do a right to left through. 2 calls, boom, one right after another. The folks are saying, oh my God, he's fast. Well, we're not fast. We're just not giving you the unnecessary 2 seconds to stop, sit back on your heels, check your phone, exchange phone numbers. You know, that's the whole concept of SSD, is by taking away or reducing the vocabulary, fewer calls for people to master. If they've mastered it, you can go one call to the next call to the next call. So, having said that, James and I are going to show you how you can go one call to the next call and be able to prep yourself, because that's going to be a large part of it, is doing your homework. the stuff that we're going to be talking about is stuff that we didn't go out on the floor one night and say, yeah, I think we can do this. Oh, that didn't work out too good. No. We work at it, we prep, we write our material so that we're able to put this stuff together in a cohesive manner that the dancers are able, dancers are able to enjoy that forward motion, call to call to call. Having said all that, my good friend from Chicago, Illinois area, I'd like you to give a nice warm welcome to James Chaw.
Thank you. This thing working? I think it's working.
Yes.
Hopefully the people in the back can hear me. All right. So yeah, I'm a relatively new caller. I've been calling 6 years now, just slightly more than 6 years. A quick shout out to my lovely wife, Janice. She's the beauty, the brains, and the inspiration behind everything. She got me into square dancing, she got me into calling. You're my muse and my rock, honey.
Wow.
So. I love embarrassing her in public. All right, so I just want to quickly share just some of our experiences with both calling with SSD and teaching with SSD. Like Buddy said in his area, in the Chicagoland area, for decades, we were a 0 to plus. And we were even smarter, and I put that in air quotes, because we tried to teach 0 to plus in 8 months. We started in September and finished in early May, crammed everything in, and the experience was you might start out with 20 students, and halfway through you have 8 or 7, and by the end you graduate 5 or 6 if you're lucky. And then most clubs took the entire summer off, and they said, yeah, we're just going to go dark. And so these dancers wouldn't square dance. They hadn't even learned calls like square through or swing through adequately, and so they come back in September for their first club dance, and yeah, they can't do a square through, can't do a swing through, and it's a plus dance. So most of these people dropped out, needless to say. So with that, years of experience with low retention rate, we'd be lucky if we get 1 or 2 club members out of every class. We taught through a park district, and they were going to think of dropping the program because it was not a moneymaker for them by any stretch of the imagination. So in 2016, my club, Glenview Squares, made a hard decision to embrace what was then known as the Club 50 program. The name Social Square Dance had not been coined yet. And it was, there was some unpleasantness. There were a lot of people who didn't want things to change, and so we lost a good 45% of our membership. But we soldiered on. Our teacher at the time was Bruce Holmes, and he developed his own lesson plan. I really don't remember in 2016 whether there was a published CALLERLAB experimental lesson plan or not. So Bruce came up with his own. He envisioned that it would take 14 weekly lessons to, assuming like a two-hour lesson, which is a bit long, I guess, to adequately teach SSD at least through standard applications. Because we were teaching through the park district, and they had a strict policy that all their all the activities in the program had to be in 9-week segments, we decided to go with 18 weeks, so two 90 sessions. It turned out to actually work out quite well for us. So since then, even since leaving the park district and finding a venue on our own, we've taught at least two sets of lessons each year, and that's assuming only one venue is available one night per week. So, we still teach a class from September to January, and then another one, a new class from January to May. Our club has grown. We grew from a little over 50 members in 2016 to 102. This was right before the pandemic. We lost 20-some members as a result of the pandemic, so we were down into the 70s. But since then, we've had a couple of cycles of classes, and we now have 94 members. We're expecting 10 to 12 new members in May. So implementing SSD has worked out quite well for us. Now, Bruce Holmes also was teaching in another area by Lake Michigan, the Evanston and Wilmette area, and those dancers eventually wanted to form their own club. So in August of 2017, North Shore Squares was founded, and they went from 0 to over 70 members in a couple of years. They lost a few as a result of the pandemic, but they've since rebounded quite nicely. So as I mentioned earlier, we hit on like 18 weeks. It was largely for those logistical reasons at the time, working with the Park District, but we found that extra cushion of a few weeks was helpful. If we have a strong class and they actually learn things in standard applications in like 12 to 14 weeks, we can spend the next 4 to 6 weeks getting them to dance more comfortable dancing at dance speed. We can also bring in some guest callers so they get used to dancing to a caller who has a different voice, a different style. And we can also start introducing extended applications. And if you have a class that struggled a little more, maybe because a lot of folks had absences because of work or whatever, or there's some people who just take a little longer to learn, that extra 4 weeks gives you a nice cushion. So now, since that, most of the Chicago area clubs who are currently running dances have decided to embrace the Social Square Dance program. I believe most of them are following CALLERLAB's recommended lesson plan or teaching order. North Shore Square still uses what Bruce Holmes kind of came up with. I've kind of done a hybrid myself, which I continually modify just based on what I learned from each class. And there are a lot of benefits to this program because you get dancers through lessons more quickly. I'm a firm believer that once they're able to actually engage in the activity, in this case square dancing, it's more likely they're going to get hooked on it and they're going to continue. Whether they decide to learn higher levels or whether they stay at the SSD DD level, they're going to at least continue square dancing. And as I mentioned earlier, you can run at least 2 sets of lessons a year, and you have a chance of greatly increasing the number of new members you bring in. I don't know if anyone does, if anyone's been involved with clubs which have had accelerated teaching programs, like a weekend blast where you try to teach people to square dance in like 3 days. I don't know. Has anyone in this area experienced that? Yeah. SSD lends itself to that because it's much easier, obviously, to teach 50 some calls in a weekend than trying to teach 100 or something. And one of the clubs that I belong to, North Shore Squares, another caller and I, we experimented with some 4 consecutive Saturdays in a boot camp. It was quite intense, but we did that because there was a lot of interest from people who wanted to learn square dancing, but because of their job and required travel, their schedule was unpredictable, and they said, we know we can't commit to weekly lessons. But if we can block out, 4 Saturdays, we could do that. So we tried it. We did bring in some members, and they have stayed with the activity, which is good. So I think we're going to get into some calling mechanics and stuff. When I started out calling, I initially tried to call plus, and predictably, my calling was not very good. I don't think it was calling. It was more just stringing together calls that technically worked from those formations, and to keep it interesting, just relying on throwing in a bunch of relay reduces and spin chain exchange of gears, because that's the only way. It wasn't my choreography; it was just the call, which had some interest. So since Glenview decided to adopt the then called Club 50 dance program, I decided I'm just going to strictly limit myself, at least for several months, to calling only at the SSD level. And it made me a better caller because I could not sit there and call the same 12 or 15 calls over and over again. I had to actually learn to call using each of the each of the 50 some calls, and I had to learn to do it from different formations, not necessarily challenging extended applications, but at least some, easy extended applications, and that was the only way to make the dancing interesting enough. So it made me a better caller. Some things I stole shamelessly from other more experienced callers, many of whom Buddy knows, just using a variety of different get-ins beyond just heads or sides, square through 4, using familiar calls, but from somewhat different formations, like I mentioned earlier, like calling a scoot back from right-hand columns or even left-hand columns, depending on the ability of the floor. And fractionalizing calls. I like calling do 1/2 of a zoom. Sometimes it takes a little bit, you gotta build up to it, and some floors are not able to do that, but it can certainly make your choreography much more interesting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Buddy, and we'll get into the meat, the substance.
We'd like to put together a square of dancers down here if we could, please. We need to have 8 volunteers, or 7, and 1 can bring an imaginary friend.
His name's Bob.
Your imaginary friend's name is Bob. Hey Ray, do we have room? Do you think we have enough room up here, or is that down there?
I think it's all off here. That would make good film. It would make great blooper reel.
Do you want to go first, or want me to go first?
You go ahead, and then I'll do it.
Sorry, you have a question? Hang on, we have to get you on the microphone. Thank you, Janet. Very bottom, very button, side. Yes. Keep going. Keep going. You did an awesome job.
Hi, I'm Julian from Houston, Texas. We've since we're retired, we travel around a lot, and we've run into SSD dancers being told they cannot dance above their level, and many of the areas don't have SSD clubs or SSD dances. How do you address that?
Easily. In everything in square dancing that we have ever seen, and I've been at this now for 46 years, nothing succeeds like success. If you've got the biggest group in town, everybody wants what you're doing. It doesn't make a difference whether you're plus, mainstream, or in our case, if we can run 80 people at an SSD dance, that succeeds. The other clubs are sitting there with 2 squares and saying, well, how come he's getting 10? Well, it's very easy. SSD. You're welcome to join in the program. It's a new program, friends, so it's just like anything else. Mainstream was brand new in 1974, but didn't catch until 1977 or 78. And then it was quickly superseded by Plus, because we didn't know that it would be quickly superseded. We thought people would stop at mainstream. That's why SSD doesn't have a natural progression to anything else. SSD is where you end. It is where you start. It is where you finish. If you choose to move on to something else, take a C1 class. Knock yourself out. Take you about 3 years to get there, right, Joe? SSD to C1? No, Joe can do it in the weekend. All right.
Once you know the basics, it's just more calls.
So talk about the basics. Since we're working with 50 to 58 calls, the idea here is, and I've seen this, and again, these good friends of mine who've been at this for 100 years and stumble and stutter because they'll use a square. How many times can you expect people to do a square through 4? I mean, in my sense, if you're going to use it in a singing call, that's 4 times. And if you use it every time you want to bring these people to a corner, what are we talking, 100 times in a night, 50 times in a night? Boring. Boring. How can we make it more interesting? Would you identify heads, please, and identify sides for the sake of this? Okay? So we know what a head square through 4 would do. Let's have the head couples take a big step forward. No, it's fine. Turn your back on your partner. You're looking at your corner. This is the result of a heads square through. Agreed? Everybody agrees with that. Heads, would you undo what you have just done? Come back to your natural home. Heads, instead, would you do a boxinette and slide through? 2 calls that seldom get played, or at least one of those calls, boxinette. If you're a plus level caller and your dancers are introducing the plus, very seldom do we hear boxinette. And as a result, very seldom do the dancers easily or comfortably do a boxinette. They may boxinette and turn to face the wrong person, but because boxinette is only one of 58 calls, let's call it 58, easier to master. Heads, would you undo what you have just done, please? Heads, we're going to work with you again. Heads, do a flutter wheel. That's an unusual start from a static square. Same heads lead right, smile, boom. End result, the same as a square through. Now, would you turn to face back in, please? There's a little bit of thing called timing that goes into this. And timing is important for a number of reasons. Number one, it allows the dancers to go from one call to the next. And number two, it allows the people to go from one call to the next smoothly. So if I said heads flutter wheel, go ahead, heads flutter wheel. Heads go forward, up, back far away. Now lead to the right. A little clunkier. A little clunkier. Heads, would you turn to face back in? By contrast, heads flutter wheel. I know you're going to finish the call right about now. Do a lead right, please. A little bit more better flow. Heads, would you turn to face back in? By the same idea. Heads, do a reverse flutter. Thank you. Heads promenade outside halfway around. Side step forward. Give me room, please. Same heads lead right. You'll be looking at your corner. Smile. It accomplished the same thing as a square through. You gave him a little bit more variety. And it allowed me to time it in such a way where the dancers think, dang, he's good. Heads, would you face back in? Now, if I were just doing this, bear in mind, remember I said from the very beginning, I've researched this. This didn't just come natural. Now, it may have been a collection of thoughts and calls that I've used over the 46 years I've been doing it, but it didn't just come out of my mouth extemporaneously. And that is a big word that we use, extemporaneous. And that single word is going to be the cause of the demise of square dancing. And this is recorded. For the record, this is Buddy Weaver saying that. Extemporaneous calling is and has been the demise of smooth dancing. If I were just to do this extemporaneously, heads reverse flutter. Good. Go forward and back. Yeah. Promenade outside halfway around. Yeah. Go forward and back again. I'm still thinking about what to call next. Now heads lead to the right. And that forward and back is what we often do. How many times does a caller take up, put them into a line, go forward and back? Why is he saying forward and back? Are they lost? They're not lost. The caller's trying to figure out what to do next. I didn't have to stop and figure it out. I knew what to do. Heads, would you turn your face back in? Another way to get them there in such a way that looks a little bit different. Heads promenade outside halfway, please. Heads, come down the middle, do a square through 3 hands. We can use simple English in this. Heads separate. Stand behind the sides. Everybody double pass through. Those in the lead, partner trade, we've accomplished the same thing as a square through 4. Now what does saying separate and stand behind the sides do? What does that call, let's see, if I were to give that simple action one name, what could I call that? Oh, I think I call it cloverleaf. But since cloverleaf is not part of SSD, can I get away with simply saying, in simple English, separate and stand behind somebody? Absolutely. Center couples, would you take a moment? Face in, please. Same 2, pass through, separate. Stand behind that couple. Wonderful. Double pass all the way through. Very leaders do a partner trade. Boom. We're right back to where we want to be. Stick out, shake right hands, shake left hands. Left element. See, they laugh, but I do this with our beginners. And if they're laughing, they're enjoying it, and it doesn't feel like a lesson. Jump in there, James.
All right, well, I'm not nearly as creative as the young man.
Shut up and call.
All right, should we do it with music? Should I just, because I don't think I need to explain a whole lot, so. Bow to your partner, bow to your corner 2, heads pass through, separate around 1, come into the middle, double pass through, leaders partner trade, touch 1 quarter, scoot back, and the boys run, past the ocean, all 8 circulate, swing through, boys run, tag the line, go all the way through, face left, and the couple circulate, Ferris wheel, centers pass through, out man left, and a right and left grand. So again, nothing fancy. I don't do a lot of real intense extended applications, DPD. I mean, unless I have a class that's specifically asking for that, and then I will usually prepare modules. Most of the time, I don't prepare, but Buddy's right. I don't really call extemporaneously. I have some idea of what calls I want to do. I may not have it all. It's not a memorized module, like from start to finish, but I know certain get-ins, and I know what calls naturally follow, and it'll just come to me. And that just comes with a lot of repetition, a lot of practice. I don't know if anyone else uses CALLERLAB. I use it with caution. I practice pattern with it. I say with caution because no software program will teach you things like hand availability and body flow. So you got to make sure that you're not doing something that's going to result in horrible body flow. Want to call something else? Anyone want the music this time?
I don't know how many of you callers are familiar with the concept of modules. Show of hands, modules. Not as many as used to be. Back in our day when we started, which would have been back in 1922, we started doing all of our choreography on cave walls. We evolved to using charcoal, but it really was memorization for the first couple of years as an apprentice caller, and then as you became a journeyman, you started working with modules. I like modules as a teaching tool for other callers. It's impossible for me to tell you extemporaneous. I can't teach anybody extemporaneous. Because extemporaneous is, by definition, something you don't even know what's coming next. Modern square dancing is different from traditional square dancing. Traditional square dancing, the dancers know exactly what's coming next. And modern Western square dancing, the dancers don't know what's coming next. Extemporaneous modern Western square dancing, the caller doesn't even know what's coming next. So therefore, for me to teach anything to you and impart any message to you, there has to be something that's pattern modules. So for example, we use, anybody here familiar with the concept of zeros? Here's one of the first zeros we've ever learned. Heads, would you take a big step forward, turn to face your corner, smile please, slide through, and you have a line of 4. Here's the first zero that every single caller uses without ever realizing it. Go up to the middle and back. A big nothing burger, isn't it? But it's a big nothing burger because it didn't do anything, it didn't move people around, but it gave the caller a moment to think about, oh, what am I going to call next? What am I going to call next? What if we were to replace that and we were to use other calls that aren't often heard? Well, so let's try this. Let's do a right and a left through, please. We often hear that. Flutter wheel. And sweep a quarter. Keep smiling. Reverse flutter. Beautiful. And sweep a quarter. And boom, just like that, they're right back where they started from. But it gave the dancers flutter wheel, it gave them reverse flutter, it gave them sweep a quarter going clockwise, and it gave them sweep a quarter going counterclockwise. Another great idea on zeros is being able to replace calls. For example, right and left through. I didn't want you to do it. I took a pause in what I'm saying. For example, the call right and left through, don't do it, is often overused. No, so let's do this. Let's have everybody do a slide through, and the original heads, would you turn the face back in? That brings you back to home. Here is a singing call figure that we have used 100 times. Heads promenade outside halfway. La, 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 la. What tune shall we sing? Happy birthday, down the middle square, through and get me 4. 4 hands around and do a right and a left through. La, 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 veer left on your Ferris wheel, 2, 3, well, the center square through 3 hands. When you swing, don't swing, that's enough. Get back home. We've all seen that figure, right? How many of us have done that figure? You fibbers, I see people, You know, the call right and left through for a rookie is kind of tough, right? And the call right and left through from a chain setup, as we had it there, or a box setup, is even tougher. So here's what I found. And it also has variety. Heads promenade outside, halfway around. down the middle, square through, four hands around. The altitude's getting to me. Forehand around with the couple in front, join hands, circle to the left halfway, veer left in your Ferris wheel. And now the center square through, la la la, three hand. You don't have to do anything else because I accomplished what I set out to do. I had the couple circle halfway around. And circle halfway, in many cases, we only think of circle as what? All join hands, circle left. Don't do it. We seldom get into four people, two couples circling halfway. Head couples take a big step forward, turn to face your corner. Beautiful. With the couple in front, circle left halfway around. With the person in front, single circle halfway around. Four of you join hands, circle halfway around. With the person in front of you, single circle halfway around. Zero, a big fat nothing burger. It brought them all the way around, but it made them think. Even the plus dancers singing single circle to an ocean wave. Wrong answer. It's not single circle to an ocean wave. Single circle ends two people facing each other. And the four-person circle, the first one, slowly, four of you circle halfway around. People can function easily with this. Two of you, single circle, halfway. Four of you join hands. Now notice, stop before you go. Notice, I'm calling ahead. I don't let them stop and get excited because right off the bat, they're in a sachet position. In many people's mind, they say, this is wrong, this is wrong. If you leave them here long enough, they'll fix it for you. I don't want them there that long. I want to get them moving. So four of you circle halfway around. This is unusual. Two of you, person in front, single circle halfway around. And I'll use terms like two of you, person in front, single, couple in front, join hands, circle right halfway around. With the person in front, reverse single circle. With the couple in front, join hands, circle right halfway around. With the person in front, reverse single circle. Oh, it's good. Alaman left. See that left hand was right there. And they're saying, God, I hate this guy. He's making me dizzy. I would never do this in a real life setting, but I'm showing you, I'm giving you ammunition. Ammunition is what you need. May I go on for a second? Yes. Variety. Here is a Buddy Weaverism. Write this down. $1 million lesson from Buddy Weaver. Dancers don't, most dancers, and especially those dancers who are at plus and down, don't care about call counts. They don't care about the calls. If you went the whole night and never called a peel off, they don't care. Most of these people don't care. And I'm going to say 99% of the people don't care. Here's what 99% of the people want. They want the experience. Sit with that for a minute. The experience is choreography that allows them to win. And see, 100% of these people won. If I would have had half that square broken down the entire time, at least 4 of these people are not going to like me. They're going to say, this guy sucks. He broke me down. I don't feel like I'm a good dancer. My caller at home never makes me feel that way. He always stops and waits for me. 72 beats for the square through, but that's okay. He's waiting for me. I want these people to feel good, not about me. I want them to feel good about themselves. If they feel good about themselves, they feel good about me. So the calls that are structured in such a way so that they win. Push them a little, but let them win. Give them music that's danceable. Give them a sense of humor, which is how many times? Shake right hands, right? Shake left hands. Humor. It's just a little chuckle that allows them to feel this is fun. They could feel connected to me because I'm talking to them. And they know I'm speaking to them. They can feel we're connected. They're connected to each other. It's social. That, my friends, is the experience. And it is an experience that we've had to eschew because we've had too many calls. You can't get 115 calls in and expect them to be 80% of them to be successful 80% of the time. Nor can you expect to have that sense of connection, humor, especially if they're breaking down repeatedly on Load the Boat, and you've called Load the Boat 10 times that night. There's not that sense of connection. So this is the experience that we can now, I feel, I can now bring to an SSD floor, and I can bring it to my beginners, and I can bring it to them every single night that we're doing from night 1 all the way through the time they graduate and after they graduate. Why don't you take something and I'm going to come back. Are you kids okay, or did you need a break? You're all young people, aren't you? Just say yes, buddy. Thank you very much. Go, James.
Yeah, that's, entertainment. I think that's, the biggest thing I learned, which took a while, was entertainment is first and foremost what you want to do. Having said that, inevitably, I do have some dancers who they want the stuff that's a little bit out of the ordinary. So I'm just going to turn the music on again, and we'll just play around a little bit. Side couple slide through. Centers pass through. Put centers in. Cast off 3/4. Now, if I were to call all 8 circulate here, is everybody comfortable with what they're going to do?
You'll find out in a second.
All 8 circulate. Centers partner trade. Centers past the ocean. Ends face in. Extend. Boys trade. Girls trade. Centers trade. Boys run. Couple circulate. Half tag the line. Scoot back. Centers trade. Split circulate. Boys run. Couple circulate. Bend your line. Touch 1/4. Column circulate. Do 1/2 of a zoom. And then chain down the line. Girls will trade by the right, and the boys will courtesy turn you. Pass through. Wheel and deal. Centers pass through. Everyone slide through. Past the ocean. Swing through. Rear back, look at your partner, and right lift grand. Meet your own. And promenade home. So again, I shamelessly stole that from other callers. I just have to confess that. But what is it? Copying is imitation of the highest form of flattery.
Yes, it is.
So you know that was a little more unusual, but obviously this floor could handle it. I don't call that a lot. It's just there are times though when you have a group of strong dancers, and maybe that particular demographic, they're the ones who want something a little more spice to it. So I'll do that around the 3rd or 4th tip, and then I'll scale it back again to using mostly standard applications. Somebody had a question? I should pass out the microphone.
Yeah, Trevor Day from Manchester, Canforth, England. An interesting one there, and there was a little hesitation on there. You had facing couples, and you said couples circulate. Nobody in the square did a couple circulate.
I tried.
They all did a pass through.
Oh, did I say? You know, that was my mistake. I used the wrong terminology. I apologize. I think I meant to say all 8 circulated. My brain and my mouth were in sync.
Well, here's what we're going to do. Just say, James, say pass through.
Pass through.
Perfect. We're going to edit the tape. He hit on a couple things too. On the mic, please.
Is it working? Yes.
Yes, sir.
My name's Rich Fingal from Colorado, and I belong to an SSD club. And at lunch yesterday, I was sitting at a table listening because I'm not a caller. I just like dancing. But there were several people at the table who said, extended applications and the stuff we just did is not what SSD is for. It's supposed to be really simple so that everybody can do it every single time. And I love DVD Plus. It's my favorite kind of dance to do. So I'm just wanting your professional opinions on the theory espoused at the table that SSD is not supposed to be this. It's supposed to be everybody has success every single time because you do it always the same way with no extended applications.
So let me speak to that, because James actually did address that when he was doing his presentation. He said, you know, sometimes you work with people who are experienced SSD dancers, And I think that also what he did here dispels the myth that it's somehow dumbed down. Because a lot of what he did there is stuff that you could not get away with on an open plus floor, the half zooms and stuff like that. So I think what James is going to, and I agree with it, is sometimes you're going to get a good polished, more experienced veteran dancers who are out there and who can do this kind of material. And it's terrific that you're able to see, like what James is presenting, the ways that it goes beyond and outside the scope. But yes, to what you're saying, fundamentally, and this is very important, fundamentally it is that we are able to get people to dance smoothly from one call to the next. But it's important also, what James is saying, to be able to expand on it and do the extended applications, I think. And what he also said about being able to research. I'm sorry, did you have a question, Rick? On the microphone.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Okay.
Rick Madden, Huntington Beach, California. We're just getting into the extended application of it. If I was teaching an SSD, this was where I would say, you know, what is the definition of a circulate? You move up one position in a circulate formation. So when you mentioned, Colin, about passing through, all we did as that extended application was we circulated to the next spot forward where we were at.
Yeah, and I have had classes where they've been learning well, and and I'm trying to expose them to extended applications and more challenging ones. And again, it's going to vary. Some classes I don't go there because they're having a hard enough time just learning standard application. I want them solid on that before they start trying to figure out how. I mean, if they're having a hard enough time doing an all-eight circulate from a right-handed ocean wave, I'm not gonna do an all-eight circulate, which now I'm saying correctly, from that inverted lines that I had.
So what I'm gathering here. Got me again. My name is Chuck Simpkins from Grants Pass, Oregon. Okay, I've been teaching SSD now for at least 6 sessions now, and 6 classes. And in my area, it's really tough to sell SSD. Okay, now I'm getting the impression that extended application, once they've learned the SSD, and in my opinion, I wouldn't give them an extended application until I've seen them dance smoothly, okay? And in time with the music, I mean, it all works together, but I've been itching like crazy to teach the extended application, and I'm about at a point to where now that we've graduated another class, summer's hitting, and I still am needing to use that night as a workshop. I'm going to start giving them the extended application, and without the president slapping me with the Gibbs slap on the NCIS style, I'm hoping that it goes over good, and I'm hoping that we can keep that SSD even at an extended type situation.
Yeah, I mean, we've done that. Like in one of our classes, last year, beginner's class, we were not able to start a new session with new students in January because the Omicron variant reared its ugly head and things got suspended for a while. So we ended up, and we also had a few dancers who definitely needed the extra work. So we just did a series of weekly workshops, and then they got solid, and they were fine with standard apps, and I started adding just a little more variety, teaching them scoot backs from left-handed waves, mini wave boxes and things like that. And then towards the end, I did a little bit of this, although there was a lot of explanation, because they would not have been able to execute an all-eight circulate from that kind of position.
Janet, you have something you want to say? No. I think Joe has something.
I'm just passing it on.
You're doing an awesome job at that.
Joe Dean. This is on. Joe Dean, California. This is not perhaps really about SSD, but I'm asking the question because of your emphasis on SSD being the place to experience smooth, uninterrupted dancing. I was at the California State Convention this past weekend, where there were some SSD sessions, and so I had a chance to dance with some people who were supposedly SSD dancers. And I had the experience of being in a square with somebody who couldn't really do a square through. He's supposedly an SSD dancer. And of course, the result was the square had to keep stopping to make him, to catch up. My question is, in the context of SSD, since your goal is to have this flowing thing, how do you deal with the dancers who are like that? Is there any special way either to teach them better, because in some cases I think people aren't necessarily teachable, or to manage the class in a way that avoids those people destroying the experience?
100%. That is an excellent question, Joe. Very good. Because if you think about it this way, we have 58 calls to teach. There's no excuse not to do a good job of teaching only 58 calls. In fact, I've often said that if you were what's the word I'm looking for? A beginner, apprentice. If you're an apprentice caller, you're just learning how to call, and your first club you're going to teach for is Plus or Main Street. That is a big, big task to teach that many calls adequately. But if you are even what was the word I just used? Apprentice. If you're an apprentice caller, there's no reason why you can't be a good teacher. And good teaching is necessary because we only have 58 calls. So, for example, if the head couples, if I were to ask you to do a square there, sorry, what was your name again? Mitch, I'm going to want you, let's do this. Have the head couples take a step forward, turn your back on your partner. Normally that's where you'd end. Mitch, I want you to step over that way about 2 paces because you are a complete goofball. And you have completely not learned how to do a square through. Now,
I'm pretty sure that you have me pegged.
I don't know you from anybody else, Mitch, but I think you're a wonderful guy who's going to be a good sport about this. Now, if we haven't taken the time to be a good teacher of square through and show Mitch that he needs to be directly in front of Janet Sahlstrom, and he's out there to the side instead. And so the next call is to do let's say the next call is to do a star through. What's Janet going to do? She's going to reach over and kind of grab him and pull him back in. Now, if Mitch has been standing there with his weight back over his hips, back over his heels, it's going to be like dragging a sack of potatoes into position. And Janet's going to get very tired. And Joe has already discussed it because he said, now how come this guy hasn't learned square through? Would you undo what you all just did? The better way is to teach it properly. If you think of a square through, for example, and Joe, I'm going to use square through because you use it as an example, right? You said, as soon as a caller said square through, you lost a dancer, correct?
Well, it was more like he hesitated. It was more like he couldn't keep up.
Okay.
He tried to do a courtesy turn after a pull by.
Got it. Let me show you a quick trick. How are we doing on time?
We're good. We got
We're good?
15 minutes. Yeah.
This is how I introduce square through. Now, before we get into this, let me tell you, I'm a big fan of history. I love history. Square dance history in particular is very fascinating to me. Did you know that square through is an offshoot of the call grand right and left? That's the way it was written. And did you know that when it was written, grand right and left, there was no such term as wrong way grand. The grand right and left went both ways. So for example, I can do this. Let's have the 4 ladies chain straight across. All my beginners are doing this. All the cool kids are doing the ladies chain. Join hands, circle to the left. See, my dancers back home do this just as well. Ladies center, men sashay. They're doing an awesome job. Everybody go forward and back. Would you please do that? Would you turn to face your corner, shake right hands? Would you agree this is your original partner?
I would.
Good. Would you mind shaking right hands with each other? Thank you very much. I would like you to smile and do a grand right and left. Go this way. Go right, go left, go right, go left. There's your partner. Pass your partner by. Element left. There's Grumpy. Come back to your partner. Promenade to partner. You're going to be about 2 steps and you're home. Heads, would you step forward? What if I were to ask you to do that same grand right and left, but only for you heads? You're special. Only you heads are going to do that little right and left grand. Start with that right hand shake, start with a smile, and reach, 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 reach. You've done all 4 hands, good. I want you to reach for your corner, just shake right hand, say hi, how you doing? Good, now shake left hands, good, now shake both hands, and do an element left. And there you go. Now they laughed about it, but I got them to do a square through. Notice how there was never a courtesy turn involved in there. Nobody turned the wrong way because it was a right and left. And how do I explain it to you? Heads only. Do your own right and left grand just for you folks because you're special. And we finished it with a right hand shake for the first few times. Now, if I'm going to really teach it well, heads, would you take a big step forward, please? Heads, let's do that. Square through, countdown, go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, done. Now, face back in, heads. Mitch, you're a goofball. I want you to mess it up.
Well, here's what I would tell you. Here's what I'd tell you. We have a dancer in the SSD club that I'm with. She's the vice president of the group because she's really, 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 really enthusiastic about square dancing. And I will do a square through exactly the way she would do it if you'd like me to. Because I've been watching her do it for 2 years.
All right, goof it up. Head, step forward, and do a square through. Go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, done. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Mitch, you're waiting. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There we are. It only has to happen once, and that dancer will not do that again.
I don't
No,
think so.
that's not.
I don't think so.
In my club, they won't. In your club.
I think you're ignoring a fact of life, which is not everybody is cut out for this activity.
That is 100% correct. Now, there are people, and now, can I speak to that too? Because there are some people who physically cannot keep up, no matter what it is, whether it's SSD or CDP or whatever it is, physically. I think that we have to be careful about letting those folks on the dance floor. And I'm going to tell you why. If you have a feeling in your head that they may fall, and I've had people who got on the floor on beginner lessons, and I thought, ooh, this guy does not look steady on his feet. Oh, well, his wife says he's got early Parkinson's. How early? And we tried to do a grand square. And he stood there, somebody bumped into him, like, whoop, time out. He can't dance anymore. And I'm going to tell you why. Because not if he falls, when he falls, we're responsible. And if he ends up injured and in convalescence, I'm going to feel awful. Because I knew that was going to happen. Full disclosure. Friends, we're callers. We're leaders. Eyes wide open. If you feel that somebody is out there dancing that could hurt themselves because they're dancing and they shouldn't be dancing, it's incumbent upon us to step forward to protect them because maybe they can't protect themselves.
They may be pulling somebody else along with it too.
That's very true.
Or the other dancers compensate by slowing down and doing things that are not giving you the experience that you want to give.
Good point. Now, Joe, we had a dancer who was kind of like Mitch, could not do a square through. And the three other angels would either push her or guide her or drank her or whatever. And I shouldn't have even used gender. It's unimportant. Gender's unimportant. The dancing, okay? And I went to the three angels. I said, stop what you're doing. You're not doing that dancer any favors. That dancer will never learn that call. And I put my wireless microphone on, and I walked out there and I called and I danced. And I waited for that dancer to arrive in front of me, and I stood there and I waited, and I waited, and I refused to reach over and pull that person right where they needed to go, because we took the time to go through, square through, we took the time to count the beats, we took the time to establish that where you end up is directly in front of person X. And we stopped the angels from doing it. That person within 2 weeks learned how to do a square through, because everybody was told to stop enabling that person to dance poorly, if you can even call it dancing poorly. Okay, I've taken enough of my time. Joe, you got a question? And I'm going to...
Well, I commented actually. Joe Gonzalez, Clovis, California. When he faced in, I have seen people face out at the last hand. When they finish square through form, they face out rather than face the corner head on.
And perhaps, what to your person back home, perhaps they need to hear that square through 4 and give a right hand shake to that corner. And maybe, and I'm not saying it's true, I'm not here to solve everybody's problems, only a few people, and they paid extra. But it may be that they need to know that when they finish this call, they're reaching for somebody. And let them get that established in their head, and then stop reaching. Then instead of a right handshake, do a do-so-do, no hands. And let them learn it that way. That's just a suggestion. You came to me with problems. I'm here to give you free advice. James. You gonna keep them dancing?
Time permitting, I feel like, unless everybody's really tired, I feel like calling one more short tip. Just to, you know, I kind of jumped to the scaled up version of keeping things interesting, and I think I want to go back to a more moderate spice. What is it? Mild spice, moderate spice.
Mild to moderate spicy.
Side couples slide through, double pass through, zoom, and leaders partner trade. Left touch of water, scoot back, it's a left hand girls, scoot back, it's a left hand boys, boys run around the girl, with a person in front of you box the nap, slide through, square through 3, trade by, swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers square through 3, insides arch and dive through, double pass through, leaders partner trade, sides face in, square your set, and you're home. How'd that feel? Decent?
Can I jump in real quick? So, because we're kind of coming down to the end, and I do want to leave some time for Q&A. Are you okay dancing a little bit more? We'll keep it short. Somebody have a question? Would you please form it? Tell us your name, your date of birth.
Tim Pepper, Carson City, Nevada, right here. We need to remember, we use terms like standard formation, extended application. Beginning dancer coming in the door, got no idea what that is, no clue. They don't unless you show it to them. But extended application, you can use it depending on your class and their ability. If you're teaching circulate and you're teaching the concept of circulate, if the dancers are going through that concept easily, it is very easy to teach a face-to-facing circulate around the outside. It's very easy to teach the all-eight circulate because you're not differentiating standard from extended app. But again, it depends on your class and their ability. So some classes I've been able to use extended app all along the way. Other classes, not so much. And also take a look at what you're teaching where you can easily teach something else. Example, courtesy turn, we know, is a separate call from ladies chain, right? Ladies chain, courtesy turn. However, courtesy turn is a separate call. If you're teaching courtesy turn, you can easily say, right pull by, okay now, courtesy turn. You start doing that a few times, a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and if I want to teach right and left through, I can do it in 2 seconds. Folks, you know we've been doing that right pull by and courtesy turn? I'm going to give that a name, right and left through. You've taught that call in 2 seconds. They've been doing it for weeks. You just taught it though in 2 seconds, but they've already had 4 time on it. But so the extended app, you can use it, but it's the judgment, just the judgment.
Excellent point. And judgment is a critical thing because at the end of the day, and I'm always reminded of something Oscar Wilde had said. Oscar Wilde was asked, the famous playwright was asked about the latest play he had just staged that day, and by a reporter, how was your play? He said the play was brilliant, the audience was terrible. We can do something, but that doesn't mean the people are going to like it. And you can force them to do it, but it won't mean that they'll still like it anymore if you force them to do it. There's a difference, in my opinion, between difficulty and different. So, for example, from your square, I'm just going to have you do something. Sides, would you, no, let's do it. Yeah, pick one. Heads lead to the right, and veer left, and bend the line. We're used to seeing lines of 4, aren't we? Go forward, do-sa-do. I'm trying to get an angle where everybody else can see it. Step forward, make a large ocean wave. Now, I didn't use the word tidal, because it's a technical term. The tidal wave, who's impressed by the term tidal wave? You all are. I am. They're not impressed by the term tidal wave. They don't know what a tidal wave is. Now that you put them there, they said, this is different. Gosh, my SSD color doesn't do this. Now what are we going to do with it? Oh, let's get out of this quickly. Girls trade. Boys fold behind the girl. Girls do a U-turn back. Please smile. Star through. Same person, California twirl. With a couple in front, join hands. Circle left, only a quarter. Back away. Oh, look, you're back in a line of 4. Go forward and come on back. Different, not difficult. Now they got that. What if I want to push the envelope a little bit? Pass through. Bend the line. Go forward, do-sa-do. Now right away, this puts them into this, what? Tidal wave again, right? Different angle. Step forward, make an ocean wave, if you would please. Big ocean wave. Different angle. They're looking at a different wall. Now what can we do? Girls trade. Hey friends, in your own ocean wave, do a swing through. Would you turn right? Only boys turn left. Now if I had a good floor, I'm not going to cue it. I don't like calling and cueing. I think it's silly. If the dancers know to call it. Don't cue it. Don't tell them. I don't have to tell them swing through, half by the right, half by the left. They should know what a swing through is. The more I say half by the right, half by the left, good Lord, as my broker keeps calling me. Boy run around the girl, girls trade, do a wheel and deal. Would you please face that couple? Please smile. And you're back to a line of 4. And it works. It's different. It's not difficult. Would you, let's see, do a right and left through, courtesy turn 1/4 more. Let the girls touch hands. And I put that girls touch hands in there because it sets the seed. What am I doing? This is a different way to do something a little bit different. James mentioned fractions. Now, couples circulate, if you would please. Good. Do one more. Couples circulate. Go 1 3/8. Would you turn to face in as a couple? And you're right back to home. Any questions? Terrific. Yeah. One more thing. James mentioned about researching. Stealing material. Borrowing? Stealing? Were you planning on returning it at any point? Research. An excellent resource, and I say this unabashedly, is we do a podcast every single week, which is free. I gain nothing from it. And the podcast features an awful lot of recordings that go back to the early days of square dancing, the 1960s. Friends, did you know that back in 1962, 64, 65, ocean waves were brand new call. Swing through was brand new in 1960. You can listen to any dance called in 1962, and you're not going to hear one single swing through. Not one single swing through. You know, we had a lot of people dancing back then. And you know, that felt an awful lot like SSD. It really did. We didn't have the animal style, but a lot of it is there. And if you listen to those recordings and you listen to what those callers did with the material, and you think, why didn't I ever think of that? Head boys go forward and back. Side girls go forward and back. Head boy, take the side girl's hand, and as a couple go forward and back. Thank you very much. Star through, same person, California twirl. They say, this is weird. Let's get out of it. Element left. Oh, look, you're right back home. Let's have the head girl go forward and back. Side boy go forward and back. Head girl, take the side boy. As a couple, go forward and back. Why don't you kids do a square through 4? Go, you can do it. Right, left, right, left. See, you're awesome. When you meet the outside couple, what you split them in 2. Right down the middle. Separate. Go around one of them. Make a line. Notice you're on the cattywampus. Cattywampus lines go forward and come right back. On your cattywampus, do a right and left through, please. Same cattywampus line, do a star through. Same cattywampus people pass through, and then the cattywampus element left. And they're just laughing like sin. And what the heck is a cattywampus? And you're right back home. It's different. It's not difficult. It's certainly not original. I probably heard a dozen callers call that in my early days of dancing. And yet, how often do we actually see that on any dance floor? When was the last time any of you said head boy and side girl go forward and back? Show of hands. When was the last time any of you called that? How long ago was it, Dan? Who is it back there? Toby.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. All right, he's a show-off. he's getting dropped from the complex. 2 minutes? All right, last bit of questions, Q&A. Name, place of birth, age.
Last 4 of my social. Tim Marino, Oroville, California. The one thing that I have not heard, but once we get the dancers' confidence level up, then it happens. Once they are confident in their moves, that should be the goal. Then all the rest of it happens.
Amen. Very well said. SSD is about building dancer confidence. And I'll say one more thing on that. We come back post-pandemic, and a lot of our plus dancers came back in and said, yeah, I can do this. Some of them are struggling. They'll still get up there and dance a plus step, but thank God we can offer them an SSD 90-minute dance after that, so they can actually build their confidence back up again and not go home feeling that because they couldn't do a single relay deducee, spin chain exchange gears, bit the dust. And they couldn't do any of that, but we gave them an SSD at the end, and they went home, and they keep coming back every week. Yes, sir.
Don Thompson, Paradise, California. Couple things. First, I use forward and back for orientation. If you've got a predominantly senior group, a little bit of confusion maybe, and especially when you're teaching, using a forward and back gives them 2 or 3 seconds to say, oh, here I am. Okay. The other thing is, and it gets to that helping each other thing in the square. I've got a very small group. The club members are desperate not to lose anybody. So they want to help all those people all they can, and they overhelp. It's an attitude thing among them, and yeah, okay, I could set them aside and, or after the class leaves, say, don't do that, here's why.
It's and it's difficult to use any kind of negative reinforcement when you're trying. I try to avoid correcting people if I can. I would prefer to say, look at it this way: there's no such thing as a bad dancer, especially there's no such thing as a bad beginner dancer. It's just bad teaching on my part. If they don't get it, it's not their fault, just because I haven't explained it well enough. But then that's just my own personal opinion. And I know many of you say, well, I've been in his class, and he's not a very good teacher. So, sir, go ahead.
So, Greg Weber from Washington, and that's not DC. We use SSD there as well, and I use, like you do, instead of square through, I'll always have the right and left grands, and then I'll do mini right and left grands for heads or sides, and they'll get it 100% of the time, no courtesy turns, because we haven't done right and left through yet. Right and left through comes weeks later.
Yes. Absolutely. We're running out of time. Anybody else? Question? Comment? Accolades? Only positive stuff.
Chuck Simpkins, Grants Pass, Oregon. I've had the same problem with the angels wanting to help so much that they're a hindrance, okay? So I have to get them together and have an angel meeting and say, I need your help. You have to ask them for their help and then tell them a good angel is where you're in the right spot at the right time. And that way they know they can get her done.
Our club, actually, we had a lessons committee, and they created a little short manual for the angels. Explain to them, this is what you have to do. There's no yanking, pulling, there's no talking over the collar, things like that. So, but they need that. Otherwise, they default to trying to be helpful.
Does it work?
It does. It does. They've actually, for the most part, there are a few bad apples, so to speak, but for the most part.
A hand for our people who've been dancing. A hand for our very own Jana White, Janet Salstrom. A hand for James Shaw.
And a big hand for Buddy Weaver.
We thank you for being here. Don't forget this afternoon we have the organizational aspect of SSD coming up. All right, thank you, friends. By the way, the t-shirt I'm wearing is to promote going to Texas next year.
Buddy, head count? Did you do a head count?
Oh, no. We do need to do a head count. Sorry about that.
One per person.
I got one.
Did you do it? Go ahead. James is going to do it. A show of hands first for everybody. Everybody, all hands up.